Y'all smile back, right? All right. Good to see you all. Another cool morning. Does this thing sound loud? No? It's just in my head? I sound good? Thank you. Thank you. Had to fish for that compliment, but I got it, right? No. It does say it sounds, I guess it's these speakers being close to them. All right. So we had different speakers, so we're back. I heard last week was borderline exciting. Maybe the missionary had his different thoughts on the time. I forgot, but it all worked out from what I heard to be able to get here. All right, so we're going to go into lesson 4. And, when I looked at the lesson, I thought, well, this is an odd lesson for this time of year. We are beyond Christmas, right? I'm pretty sure my calendar, I've flipped it over to January. But we're still going to go back and we're going to look in the book of Luke. And I'm glad there was a quote in the lesson by, I'm pretty sure he was a preacher. He was definitely a theologian, but it was a man by the name of A.T. Pierson. And I had heard this quote, real brief quote, but he said, history is his story. So I thought that's a good quote. Now that helped me to feel more comfortable about teaching what we would call a Christmas lesson, because it's really a history lesson that we're looking at, and that's what the birth of Christ is. It's a part of history, and we're looking in the book of Luke in particular. And I had read some things about Luke, and Luke received a lot of praise. I think one writer said that Luke was a historian of the first order. I mean, he's just very accurate and very precise in the history that he gives us and the picture that he presents of the birth of Christ. So it is history. We think about history, I think maybe in my mind, we see history as it plays out, right? Because we're in the moment, but God sees history as it's going to be. And He sees it He sees the whole thing, is the only way I know to say it. But we see the bits and pieces that put it together. And so that's kind of what we'll see, hopefully, in this lesson, starting this lesson, is that we'll see how God puts the whole thing together. And we know this even when we don't know that He's putting things together. And I know sometimes that's frustrating. I bet we've all been in situations and we think, is God even present? Is He doing anything? Y'all ever been in a situation like that? You're not doubting God, but you're saying, I just don't see His hand in this. I don't see what He's doing. So we're all finding our way in that position. And I think maybe, no doubt, Mary and Joseph did, but they also had some comfort before. The angel had came to Mary and told her what was going on. Joseph had the dream. God let him know what was going on. So God had laid a good foundation with them, I think, to be accepting of what was taking place. Does that make sense? I'll ask y'all questions this morning just to get you to participate, right? Is that right, Brother Don? That sound good? Okay. So we'll look in Luke chapter 2. And again, it's history and it's His story. So we can teach history any time of year, can't we? I think we can. And I think I mentioned over at Brookdale, I've mentioned it here, when we had history in high school, I had a football coach. And we thought of 2 different coaches, and he was more of a football coach. So I really had no interest in history until I got out of high school. But I like history like this. This is good history. This is the history. This is our history as Christians. We need this history. Without this history, without the birth, you couldn't have the resurrection. So all these things had to take place, and God was in full control. So He says in Luke chapter 2, verses 1 through 7, it says, and it came to pass, and I highlighted that. As I read, a lot of times I'll highlight it. I highlighted it in my Bible. But it came to pass. And that's very important, isn't it? It's not this that the story was being told, but it was told and it was known before the foundation of the world, and then it came to pass. So it did happen. That's the way it is with God. It does come to pass. So it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. And this taxing was first made when Cyrenius was governor of Syria. And again he says in verse 3, he says, and all, so all means all, and this was the the known world at this time, Rome, I mean, their sphere of influence and what they ruled over was just, it was huge. You think back to the Roman roads that still exist in England and other places all over the world that they pretty much controlled the known world at that time. So again, it says, and all went to be taxed, everyone into his own city. And Joseph also went up from Galilee, out of the city of Nazareth, into Judea, unto the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, because he was of the house and lineage of David. So you read through this, you'll think back that we've read all these different prophecies that's going to take place. Well, and here they are. Here they're happening. They're taking place. We see the providence of God. And we'll look at some of the things. There's only 3 topics for this lesson, but we'll see how we go. Because he was of the house of and lineage of David, to be taxed with Mary, his espoused wife, being great with child. And so it was that while they were there, the days were accomplished that she should be delivered. And she brought forth her firstborn son, and wrapped him in swaddling clothes, and laid him in a manger, because there was no room for them in the inn. That there no room is 2 words that are also be important in our lesson. Also, so our overview of the lesson, it just kind of talks about how it was a very dark time in Jewish history, but yet God was continually working to fulfill the prophecies of a Savior sent to redeem mankind from the penalty of sin. Now that's the lesson's overview. But we do know that it was a dark time in their history. They were under Roman rule, and I don't think any people wants to be under a strict rule like that. Even though the Romans were smart in the way they governed, they would allow people to keep some of their culture. They would allow people to continue some of their whatever religion they might practice, but they set boundaries. And if you got beyond those boundaries, they acted, they intervened, and they put a stop to it. So here was the Jewish nation. They were under the rule of Rome. So again, a hard place to be in. So our lesson goes into talking about, and I'll touch this just a few things, but there's 3 things. The outline is joy in his providence. The second part will be joy in his presence. And the third will be joy in his provision. And we'll see if we get to all 3 of those. But their introduction, it talks about, I thought this was interesting because we've seen these things separately, but if you put them together and you see the word that pops up so many times. But he asked the question, have you ever noticed how often Christmas carols mention joy? Well, they do. What comes to mind? One of the first Christmas songs you think of? Joy to the world. We all know it, don't we? Joy to the world. So we think about it. He lists a few. He lists the song, What Child Is This? And I'm not going to sing these, but the verse he's talking about, it says, raise the song on high. The virgin sings her lullaby, joy, joy, for Christ is born, the babe, the Son of Mary. Then there's the song, O Holy Night. The verse that says, a thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. Then there's the song, Hark the Herald Angels. This is leading to something. Hark the herald angels sing. It says, joyful, all ye nations, rise, join the triumph of the skies. With angelic host, proclaim, Christ is born in Bethlehem. The little song, O come ye all faithful. It says, joyful and triumphant, O come ye to Bethlehem. So it's used in a lot of places, isn't it? A lot of different songs that it is. That's the title of our lesson, is a season of rejoicing. So that's why I wanted to share these. The song, God Rest You Merry Gentlemen. The verse that's mentioned there is, O tidings of comfort and joy. Comfort and joy, O tidings of comfort and joy. Then the ones you all immediately came to your all mind was this one. I didn't know this about this song, but the song, Joy to the World. And the verse it goes to is, joy to the world, the Lord has come, let earth receive her King. So any of y'all know anything about this song? It was written by Isaac Watts. It was published by Isaac Watts. Did you know it wasn't really a Christmas song originally? I didn't know that. But we always sing it at Christmas, don't we? But it was actually written, he was thinking about the second coming of Christ. When he said, joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her king. So that's what he was talking about. But we've took it, Christians have taken it. This was in 1719 when it was published. And we've took it and made it Christmas. There's nothing wrong with that. Because, joy to the world. I'm sure that if Mary and Joseph and those that were believers had known it, they would probably sing it, wouldn't they? They would sing joy to the world. Because it did bring great joy. So again, it was published by Isaac Watts in 1719. And again, is intended to celebrate not Christ's birth in Bethlehem, but his second coming. So little things, I guess, that we learn along the way. I like to learn about different songs. And I need to read more of them. I've got like 3 books there at the house, and they're different little stories about Christian songs that we sing. And it tells about the writer. It'll tell something, maybe why they wrote it, the background for the songs. So it's pretty good. It's pretty interesting to know those things about the songs that we do sing. So we love this song. The writer talks about because of its words, and they're true of Jesus. If they're true about his birth, and they're true about the joy that was unspeakable that came to the world. And it was. We still rejoice in that today, don't we? Isn't that something? Something that happened all that time ago. We still, that is what Christmas is, isn't it? It's a celebration. It's a rejoicing of the birth of our Savior coming into the world. So it's still a season of rejoicing. So again, we've already talked about the time of Christ's arrival in history. But he points out that this is a good point that signifies that God had not forgotten mankind. They were in a very dark time, and maybe they thought, well, he's just forgot us. He's forsaken us. But yet God was working the whole time, wasn't he? And he, at the most inopportune time, the time that we would have never picked, God does something. And God still does it that way, doesn't he? He doesn't pick we don't pick the time. We don't pick the place either. But God does all these things. And God was, they say orchestrating, but I'll say God was leading the orchestra. And he still is. He's still leading the music, leading the song. And he had a plan, and he's going to work that plan out. Psalm 16:11 says, Thou wilt shew me the path of life. In thy presence is fullness of joy. At thy right hand there are pleasures forevermore. So God has a plan, and it's a good plan. It's for our benefit. So it talks about how that Christmas is about declaring that there is joy to be found because Jesus, whose name Emmanuel means God with us, was sent to earth, and we could eternally be with him. So I think about, imagine that God sent his only begotten Son to earth to be a man, to put on the flesh. I can't remember the name of the person, but he was a naturalist. And he was watching that anthill one day, and he was trying to understand them. He made this statement. This maybe seem odd to you all, but he said, I could only understand them if I were to be able to become one of them. And that's really kind of what God did. He already understands this, but I think it gives us that we know that he was touched by the same things that we are touched by. And it gives us that view. So just a good way of looking at it, that God wanted to be so with us. He talked about how he walked in the garden in the cool of the day with Adam and Eve. So God wants to be with us. He wants to be near us. But in Luke chapter 2, verses 1 and 2, the first part of our lesson, it speaks of joy in his providence. And it begins, and it came to pass in those days that there went out a decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. And this taxing was first made when Cyrenius was governor of Syria, and all went to be taxed, everyone in his own city. So again, he talks about how those days that are mentioned in Luke chapter 2, verse 1. Again, they were challenging days. He keeps bringing this point because they were. They were challenging days for the Jewish people. The Jewish people, a lot of them, for the Messiah, was a way out from under the thumb of the Roman government, right? That was the reminder. That's what the Messiah would do. But that wasn't not what he came the first time to do, was it? He wasn't to remove them from under the rule. But it was actually to set them free, wasn't it? There's different kinds of freedom. You know, I've read of people that have been imprisoned in some of the gulags and different places in Russia, but yet they were imprisoned, but they were not. They were free. They were spiritually free. And you can be that. So that's what the Lord came to offer. So again, there were challenging times. The world had been conquered. Israel was occupied. And as if answering to a foreign power wasn't enough, the people had to obey Caesar's edict of taxation. And we all love taxes, don't we? Thank goodness tax day's coming, right? I can't wait till it gets here. Can you all? And then we get to work, I don't know how many months it is to pay our taxes again for the year. But here they are. They had to travel. You know, we can get on a computer and do our taxes, or we can drop it in a mailbox. They had to walk. They had to go to the place, the home city, and to take care of their taxes. So a lot different. They didn't have the Postal Service. So they had to do that. And it's not really a picture of a time of joy. And it goes to the point here I just kind of touched on, but that Joseph and Mary were forced to walk. You know how many miles it was from Nazareth to Bethlehem? I didn't know this. You ladies would be so excited if you had got to do this. It's 90 miles. Now, if you ever been expecting, I remember when my wife was expecting, she would have been overjoyed to think that she would get to walk 90 miles in her third trimester. Does that sound exciting? It doesn't, does it? But that's what they had to do. So imagine that. So it definitely wasn't an easy thing. So they had to go there. They had to walk those 90 miles to pay their taxes. And again, but he points out something. He says that Caesar may have been the ruler, but God was in charge. So again, things happen and they play out, but they don't play out to our understanding. And I know we've all experienced that. I mean, I know I have. I guarantee you all have too. You thinking, what on earth is going on? And then we'll see maybe how things were working out. So one of the first things in his providence is he originates the story. He's the beginning of it. It starts with God, doesn't it? And it ends with God also. It's an illustration. I had to read it a couple times. I thought, what kind of illustration is this? And I can kind of understand it. But it says during a history lesson, one teacher tried to impress upon her students the advantages of peace and disarmament. She asked the class, how many of you object to war and think it's a bad thing? Several hands shot up, and she called on one of the students to explain. Jim, she said, why do you object to war? Jimmy said, well, because war makes history. And he said, and I really object to history. So what was Jimmy saying? He didn't like history. That was his objection to it. So he points out, he says, regardless whether you think history is an exciting or sleep-inducing subject, what's certain is that God is the author of the story of mankind. So that's comforting. That should be comforting. That should be a cause for joy, I think. You know, to know that things that we live in a world right now, that it's insanity, isn't it? If you watch the news, you'll see how insane, because we got everything in the moment, don't we? We can see it as it's happening, almost. And we live in a crazy, chaotic world at times. So it appears, but yet God is in control. He knows what's taking place. So that should give us joy. That should give us some comfort. I mean, it does me, because I kind of like things in order. And I know Brother Bernard, I always pick at him, but I know being an accountant, things have to be in order, don't they? You don't put your totals up here. You got to be aligned, doesn't it? How did we get to that? And God gives us the how-to we got to this, and how He's working. So God is in control. And he talks about how what's certain is that God is the author again, of the story of mankind. He wrote history. God wrote history with the prophecies of the coming of His Son. And I knew this number, but it's good to see it again. But it talks about how over 350 times in the Old Testament prophecies were given concerning Jesus, His birth, His work on the cross, and His death, and His resurrection. That's amazing, isn't it? 350 times. All the way from Genesis, all the way through, telling who He is, who He's going to be, when He's coming, what He's going to do, what He's going to be like, all these things. So there's a lot of references that's given. We've read these. Isaiah 7:14, if you want to write these down, go back to them. It is a good reference. I'll read it. It says, "Therefore the Lord Himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel." So He didn't just prophesy about the birth of His Son. He also made it all come to pass. 1 Timothy 3:16, "And without controversy, great is the mystery of godliness. God was manifest or made known in the flesh, justified in the Spirit, seen of angels, preached unto the Gentiles, believed on in the world, and received up into glory." Boy, He told the story in a hurry there, didn't He? But He did. I mean, he told the whole story in just a verse. 1 Peter 1:9 through 11 says, "Receiving the end of your faith, even the salvation of your souls, of which salvation the prophets have inquired and searched diligently, who prophesied of the grace that should come unto you, searching what manner of time the Spirit of Christ, which was in them, did signify, when it testified beforehand the sufferings of Christ and the glory that should follow." So we see all these pictures, these truths, these prophecies that come true. So He originated, and He orchestrated history. And he guided history. And He does guide history, doesn't He? And it's amazing sometimes that unseen hand that guides things and guides people through life. And even people that don't even know and would never allow themselves to be willingly guided, but they are guided. I believe old Caesar Augustus, God had his hand. He pushed him right along the direction He wanted him to go. So God not only originates history, but He also orchestrates it through His power. President James Garfield, he said this. He said, "It is this way. History is the unrolled scroll of prophecy." I thought, well, that's a good saying, isn't it? That's one of our presidents. I wish we had more presidents like that today that were willing to say these things. So I don't know if the second buzzer got me. It's getting ready to, isn't it? Did it? Let's ignore it. No, we won't. Let's do this right here. But he talks about there was a script written by God long before we were ever born, and that all the events of the world, this world, even those that we don't understand, are working according to His providential plan for the fulfillment of His will. Jeremiah 1:12 says, "Then said the Lord unto me, Thou hast well seen, for I will hasten my word to perform it." So again, the Lord is going to do that. And I wanted to hit this, and I'll stop, I promise. But Caesar, he issued the imperial order that the entire Roman world pay taxes. He no doubt did it partly to benefit the empire and partly to fulfill his own pockets. But as another ruler recorded the Scriptures, God holds the king's heart in His hands. I wanted to do that because Brother Bernard has always been good to help me figure out where that verse is, and more than once he has. Proverbs 21:1. It says, the king's heart. Yes. The king's heart is in the hand of the Lord, as the rivers of water. He turneth it whithersoever He will. So yet God can take ungodly men and use them also because He guides. So we'll stop there, and Lord willing, we'll get as far as we can next week. I'll try to hurry through, but I just can't hurry fast enough. All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Yes.
You said the unseen hand, that's a song too.
Yes, it is. Yeah, as I go through these lessons, these songs will come to your mind. I think, I started with a song about that. And you think, well, where do these people get these things? They're from the Bible, aren't they? Thank you for mentioning that.